And I'd like to say right now, good morning to Denise Cole, who is a Labrador land protector and talking to us from Labrador, I guess.
Yes, I'm in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Good morning.
Good morning. I seem to have unplugged my headphones, so I can hear you only very quietly, but that is not your fault. It is mine. So, for us this morning, it is there we go. For us this morning, it's raining here. How's it over there?
We have the makings of a nice day. It's a little bit overcast, but it's fairly warm. So it's what we call a large Labrador day. So it's beautiful here today.
Wonderful. So, can you tell us a little bit about what is happening right now, and maybe we could start with the Labrador Land Protectors and what you are doing right now, because we understand that some of your elders are being arrested.
It's the Labrador Land Protectors are sort of exactly as the name implies. We are a group of very concerned citizens, both Indigenous as well as settler, who live downstream from a Crown Corporation-owned mega dam that's in mid-construction at Muskrat Falls. And so we have been involved in this resistance to this mega dam for quite some time, some of us for years. Some of us, it's really escalated over the past couple of years. And in essence, in this escalation, we keep putting pressure and asking questions and demanding responsibility and accountability from governments. It's our provincial government who is in the lead of this project. It's also being backed by federal loan guarantees. And so in the resistance, we have, many elders that are involved, as well as youth and, women and men and many people who have been looking at many different ways to fight back against this project because of the negative impacts that we're feeling from it and going to feel for the next generations. So in that, some of our elders now have been arrested. There's actually close to 60 of us land protectors who are facing criminal or civil charges in our resistance to this project. What the Crown Corporation, Nelcor, has done, and it really feels like government is using these different systems like the justice system against us, where they have a very heavy-handed, broad-sweeping injunction that really restricts our ability to peacefully protest or to mobilize in an effective way to try to force the stoppage of this project. So most recently, it's been it gained a lot of national attention in July when the grandmother Beatrice Hunter was arrested and incarcerated for well over a week. And then we had Marjorie Flowers, also an Inuit woman, and then as well as two Nunatulavut or Southern Inuit elders, James G. Learning and Eldred Davis, who've all been arrested and incarcerated for quite a few numbers of days, up to 10, 11 days, for not signing an undertaking. So and we try to make people understand this is not because they were tried and convicted of a crime. This is because they refused to sign an undertaking that would really restrict their ability to stand up and say this project is wrong, and to go to a place where we call it the main gate, and that's where it's the main entryway into the work site for the mega dam. And it's where we tend to have gone to and gathered many times, or on the north side, which we call the North Spur as well. And we've taken vigil walks in there. We've done ceremonies there. We've done slowdowns of traffic going into the work site. We've sometimes said that's it. We're not allowing any vehicles to go into the work site. And so that's led to this injunction that says we can't be anywhere within a kilometer of the work site or we risk arrest. And so that's how it's led to that. Now, we're very happy to say that our people are not in jail right now, but they're certainly not what we would call free. They are released on conditions, and two of our elders, Marjorie as well as Jim, are on house arrest. So again, it's a very restrictive way when you're trying to do something that's right.
And it's one of the tactics of energy companies against protesters. We've seen in the Dakota Access Pipeline, we've seen again and again, is that the state uses its force in order to try to silence people. And that is definitely, sounds like that is definitely happening in Muskrat Falls and has been happening for quite a while there, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Actually, Nunatuvet is one of the Indigenous groups here back in 2013 that they also had an injunction from Nalcor, and they went to court and they beat that injunction because basically they proved it wasn't constitutional and infringed on not just Indigenous rights but also Canadian rights. But it seems like, and you're absolutely right across the country and well into the States and really across the world that we're seeing these energy projects. I always say whether it's, pipelines or mega dams, which is another form of killing our rivers. And for us, it's about water is sacred, and all of our water is sacred. It all interconnects. We're all under, one human species. And the idea that energy companies that are being backed by governments who can then use police forces, they can use legislation, they can use the justice system, they can use, pushing through environmental assessments, pushing through permits, giving loan guarantees, all of these things. And while we in a country that talks about truth and reconciliation, and that we're going to try to stop traumatizing, individuals on land, who are trying to protect their land. And we talk now about land trauma and what that implies, that here we are, and this is exactly what's being faced in a very small community. I mean, Happy Valley Goose Bay is where I live. I'm 30 kilometers downstream from the mega dam, and we're a small population of 7,500 people. But for example, right now, because Nalcor is bringing their transformers through from Cartwright, which is a much smaller community of just a few hundred people, we have a massive police force that's here right now that says they're here for public safety, but yet they're the ones who are escorting these transformers from Cartwright, up to 300 kilometers of dirt road to the work site. And so when we're there at what we call our peace camp, which is across the road from the main gate, we've had now 2 different sets of transformers come in, and many of us have gone there, and predominantly it's been women who are there and elders who are there, and we're at this point bearing witness because we realize that what government has done is they've sent in hundreds of police officers and really expecting us to react violently, or I guess wanting us to react violently, and they're showing this incredible show of force to not allow us to do anything that would impede the work of this project. And when we have police officers who are in full uniform with their bulletproof vest on, and some of them, packing like 2 and 3 guns that are facing you, and they say they're there for our public safety, and I've said it to them every time we've gone up there, is how can you be there for our safety when you are facing us? You're protecting this main gate, you're protecting Nalcor and the government-led project. That's certainly not about our public safety. So it's a huge intimidation factor, and it is happening right across Canada. I mean, in Manitoba, you have Manitoba Hydro, who's pulling a lot of the same stunts that we see are being pulled by Nalcor, which is our Crown Corporation for utility power company that's here. And then we see the same thing in Quebec Hydro and BC Hydro, and that this federal government is backing all of these provincial Crown corporations to allow this to happen, and talk it at both sides of their mouth as they talk about, United Nations Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People, because most of these projects are happening on Indigenous lands. Mm-hmm. And so they're doing, this whole divide and conquer with Indigenous groups, and in the process destroying land, destroying water, and, destroying opportunities for the next generation to be able to live a traditional life or to benefit from connections to the land. Like for us, methylmercury is a huge concern coming into our food web. And the Harvard study that the government did last year through their Make Muskrat Right campaign told us these things, and that's why there was a huge uprising last fall where actually land protectors occupied the Muskrat Falls worksite for 5 days in an attempt to stop the flooding of a reservoir that would, in essence, poison our traditional food web, which is a huge piece of our lifestyle, especially in Rigolet. to have that threatened and compromised, and it's still happening now. We're still trying to fight these same battles.
And so you did not end up getting them to stop flooding the reservoir. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, and what had happened was that, again, I mean, this is very much a people-led movement that's here in Labrador, and we're supported, of course, by protectors and supporters right across the country and into the Newfoundland portion of the province. But what the provincial government did last year, when the camp was occupied and we had literally hundreds of people who said, that's it, it's not going to happen, you're not going to flood the reservoir, they pulled out the three Indigenous leaders. Like here in Labrador, we have Innu Nation, who is a core partner within this project, and it's actually what we believe has led to them being able to get to a land claim table, and right now they have a land claim in principle. And then we have Nunatsiavut government, which is Northern Inuit, who will feel the impacts within their land claim in the community of Rigolet, and they also have many beneficiaries downstream. And then Nunatsiavut, which is the Southern Inuit group that is looking for a land claim and hoping to get a land claim table. That what they did, the provincial government pulled these three Indigenous leaders into a marathon meeting in St. John's. With each of them got to bring sort of a core team with them that included, elders, and they went to St. John's, which is the capital of the province, and went inside the Confederation building, and provincial government led a marathon meeting of 11 hours. That basically, and one of the things they said to media during that 11 hours is they will not leave until a deal has been struck, which is a very colonial way of doing things. You don't bring elders and leaders out of their homelands and then force them through 11 hours and say, we're not letting you out until you agree to something. And what they agreed to was this methylmercury agreement, which even now, actually, they are still dragging their feet significantly on. They've already broken the promise of lowering the water this spring. And now they're supposed to be putting an independent expert advisory committee in place to help mitigate reservoir clearing. And now it's late August, and they still have no work done. They've announced a chair, so it looks like probably another winter that we're going to have vegetation underwater, which is a huge, and nobody will give us answers about what that means for the methylmercury that we'll have to have to deal with.
So that wasn't included in the Harvard study, is the impacts of methylmercury, how it gets into the water, and like that. I would expect that that's where I'd find the information in that Harvard study.
Yeah, it was completely included, and it pushed very hard that there needed to be not just tree removal, but soil removal and ground vegetation removal within the reservoir area. So they're going to flood 39 meters up in behind that reservoir. What they allowed to happen over the winter, and that was done in consultation with each of these Indigenous groups, experts, which Nunatsiavut would be Memorial University as well as Harvard, is that they allowed them over the winter to flood up to, I think they went as high as 22.5 meters. And that's kind of still where we are. And this sort of leads us to another issue that we've known about for a long time. The North Spur is a very sensitive area that acts as a natural dam. And that natural dam there's been landslides there over the years. It consists of what they call quick clay or sensitive clays. And when they're saturated with water, they can liquefy, and when they're agitated, it can literally just turn into sludge and water. But upstream, I mean, this is understanding the geography of Labrador and where we are. It's very, very sandy. Most people are sort of surprised, actually, because they sort of expect you're close to the, a tundra northern area, that there would be a lot more rock. But we're in like sort of what would be like a river basin. So there's a lot of sand here. And that river is the 7th largest river in Canada, and it's a lot of sand. So the upstream, when they flooded over the winter, and Melcor keeps saying that they have all the scientists, they have all the engineers, and they know exactly what they're doing, and that we have nothing to worry about. But the reason why they haven't lowered the water in the reservoir to look at further clearing over this summer is because they hadn't been prepared for the upstream soil erosion that happens to the riverbanks. So when they tried to lower that water, those riverbanks started to cave in.
Wow.
Which has been what our traditional knowledge holders have told us would happen. It's a part of this fear, but it seems to be it's consistently that whatever we have said, and when I say we, this includes our elders and our traditional knowledge holders who've known this river and this is a river that our ancestors have used for as long as there's been humans stepping foot on this part of the world. And the idea that people from away keep making decisions and saying, no, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's led to, we've had the community of Mud Lake has been flooded downstream. This is the first time that's happened in over 200 years that community has been in existence, of flooding of this magnitude. And the only thing that's different this year is that this is the first year that Nalcor has been manipulating our river with their spillway. So all of it is it's just sort of incredible that we're in a position right now where we're having to fight to literally save our lives, because our food web is a huge piece of it with methylmercury, but the North Spur and those concerns about that area of land letting go, or them not being able to actually construct the dam on sand, we're talking about 1,000+ lives downstream that will be lost. And we're talking about the entire community of Mud Lake will be lost. 60% of our water will be contaminated. We'll lose part of our energy. We'll lose access out of our community. We are going to have our our sewage treatment plant will be compromised. We'll have over 350 buildings that will be effectively washed downstream, and that includes life. That includes a daycare and churches, our biggest grocery store. The fact that these things are happening and going unchecked, it's just incredible, because what we're asking for, we believe, a very reasonable request. Like, we want to see them finally make progress on this methylmercury agreement. We want to see them initiate a independent review of the North Spur stability. And it really comes down to, because there's so much around this project that hasn't been answered to, that we're also asking, like, why isn't there a public inquiry and a forensic audit, which we're not the only people in the province asking for this. And our government has said, well, we're going to do a forensic audit after it's all over, which for us is absolutely ridiculous, because then the damage is done, and we're talking about at least 2 years from now before they even start.
And the forensic audit is, they're already at double their initially projected cost. Denise, we're going to take a little break. We're going to go to a song, and then we're going to come right back.
Awesome. Okay. Sounds great.
So we're going to play something from a local band from Winnipeg. Niwa Mason and Jerry Atwell and Vince Fontaine are in this band called Indian City, and their album is called Here and Now, and this song is called Through the Flood.
Darker lies, fading heartbeat, fading cries, started sinking like a stone, going down, not going home. The tide has turned, the waters rise, another day passes by. I could see them, I could see them, my love. Rising through the flood.
And that was Indian City. Thank you so much, Indian City, for making that album. Well, it is 17 degrees right now in Winnipeg, and it's still 17 degrees, and we are on the phone right now with Denise Cole from the Labrador Land Protectors. Hi, Denise.
Hey, that's a very fitting song. Thank you for using that one. It certainly gave me some things to think about.
Awesome. We are pretty proud of this band of heavy hitters in Winnipeg. So I wanted to you've given us like a lot of information about a lot of different pieces of the process, and we've talked like a little bit about sort of a lot of different things, but can you tell us a little bit more? So you've talked about the North Spur and the dangers of erosion. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what the North Spur is, and kind of draw a little verbal map for us about where it is and where it is in relation to the rest of the dam?
Absolutely. So like I said, where we are in Happy Valley Goose Bay is about 30 kilometers downstream from Muskrat Falls. Now, Muskrat Falls is the place on the river, and if you do sort of a Google search, you can find Muskrat Falls on what when Labrador was forced in Confederation with Newfoundland and Canada, Joey Smallwood, our very first premier, renamed our river. We know it, the traditional Innu name is Mistashipu, and then the Grand River is what many people have called it, and what many of us still call it, but Churchill River is, if you do a Google search of Muskrat Falls, Churchill River, Labrador, you'll find it pretty quickly, especially now because, of course, they've turned it into an investor central for this mega dam. But Muskrat Falls, for us, has for generations been a sacred space. It's and where it connects into the river itself, the falls are incredibly powerful. Unfortunately, right now, and we've been grieving this fact that they're underwater because of how they flooded up to this point. But because the falls have been so incredibly strong, that no one could paddle up the falls or down the falls. So the easiest way to gain passage when you had to travel there, which again, like I said, this has been a river that indigenous and settler people and explorers have had to use to get into central Labrador before the modern day of roads and vehicles, they would have to portage over this area on the north side of Muskrat Falls. And that's what has been referenced as the North Spur. And so there's a traditional trail that used to be there. They've actually found between the north and south side over 80,000 artifacts, some dating back over 3,000 years, and over 60 different trail systems and campsites. And all of that's been dug up. Those trails are gone. They no longer exist. Those campsites are they're gone, which is a whole other level of hurt that happens for those of us who are connected to this area. So this north side that the people had to travel up and over in order to get past the falls and put their canoes back into the water to go further upstream. This has been what we call a natural dam for like I said, generations. And what's had to happen, because of course there's never been a reservoir behind Muskrat Falls. So with the creation of this dam, they're going to create a reservoir. I think it's over 100 square kilometers, and it'll be 39 meters will be what they rise the water to. Like right now, normal time for this time of the year, it should be about 16 meters. So you can imagine 39. That's quite a rise. Mm-hmm. And the North Spur is made out of sand. And they say that there's, rivers underneath the North Spur, that we have different drillers who have connected with us and talked to us, who have said they've done core samples where they've gone down over 400 meters and 400 feet, and still can't find bedrock. All they get back, all they pull up is this sludge and sand and mud and water. And so this is what this whole area is made of. And for generations, there's been tree cover on that. Like, there's been a full forest that's there and habitat that's been there. And those things, of course, help root and hold in that sand and keep it from washing away. But what they've done now is they've completely stripped all the vegetation off of the north side. And they have, what they're trying to do is level it down off both sides so that they can create sort of like a curtain, is what they call it. So a curtain wall with rocks and different things that they believe they can hold in this 39 meters of water. But we have not only our own traditional knowledge holders who tell us differently, but there's also Dr. Stig Benander, who is from the UK, but is an expert in quick clays and has worked on many other dam projects. And most recently also the University of Sweden, that there's people who have been writing master theses about this who believe that the plan that Nalcor has put forward, and this is the other thing, Nalcor doesn't want to share any information, that we have outside experts who have said they're not going to be able to make this work because sensitive clays, when they're agitated and water is added to them, they just turn to a silt water. And so if this area, once they flood it, and that water starts to saturate it into the North Spur, we don't know that it's going to hold. Nalcor says it's going to hold. Nalcor also said they could lower the water this spring, but now because of upstream soil erosion, they can't lower the water. So Nalcor says a lot of things, but if anybody's following the news at all, they can certainly see between the cost and the poor management and planning, nothing has really gone how they said it was going to go. So the idea that we're supposed to trust that they can build this dam and make that stability of the North Spur hold, they're asking us to trust our lives to them. Like, I live right at the edge of the flood zone. We don't know how, if this wave of water and silt and mud, and it's going to take a lot of trees and riverbank along with it until it hits us, which won't take very long because we're only 30 kilometers down below. We don't know how that wave is going to react against our sandy properties that are here now. So the idea that we're supposed to trust Nalcor with our lives,
why would you? I mean, they're just not proving themselves to be trustworthy in any way. They seem to not even know their own situation, with their budgets and their scientific processes, and their going back on their word with the methyl mercury. And what did you call that methyl mercury committee again?
It's an independent expert advisory committee that was sort of what they agreed upon. We had the three hunger strikers, Billy Gauthier and Delilah Saunders and Jerry Kohlmeister, were on a hunger strike for almost 2 weeks. And it ended up with them in Ottawa, where they negotiated 4 conditions with the provincial government and the Labrador Indigenous leaders that led to what we reference as the Methyl Mercury Agreement of October 2016. And from that, one of their stipulations was to have an expert advisory committee put in place that was both science and traditional knowledge based, and that they would make the decisions based on science and traditional knowledge on how much of the reservoir needed to be cleared from vegetation in order to have the least amount of impact of methylmercury into our downstream food web. And that was all. I mean, it took them apparently, over 8 months to put together a terms of reference that's the most vague term of reference I've ever seen. And what they've done is create another hierarchy of decision-making processes that include not just the Independent Expert Advisory Committee as their umbrella, but now an Oversight Committee and an Independent Expert Committee, and then an administrative team to go along with that, and another ad hoc subcommittee. So it's layering and forcing the decision-making process that's going to be very time-consuming. And one of the other things that they've also said, so Nalcor gets to be a part of this Oversight Committee as well as the federal and provincial governments, and it was agreed upon in the beginning that they would not have a voting role because it would be about science and it would be about the traditional knowledge holders making those decisions of what's best for the downstream food web as well as us as a population who relies on it. Now, within this terms of reference, they say that it's going to be a consensus-based model for decision-making that includes non-voting members. So for us, it just feels, it feels like the voting is going to be rigged. So no matter what way we've tried to do this, to force accountability in our government, they keep finding loopholes to basically do whatever they want. So that's what's forced us to have to get ourselves arrested, and we've been reaching out across the whole country because we need help. We're a small population. We're very determined. We won't stop because the next generations are counting on us and our ancestors. You know, we have a responsibility that we have to do this. You know, some people have sort of said, well, you know, why don't you just stand down at this point? You're not going to win. You know, you're not going to stop the project. And for us, we continue to say we have to stand up for the next generations, and Mother Earth is on our side on this. We believe in protecting our river. We believe in protecting the land and protecting the lives of people downstream. The fact that our government, and is being backed by this federal government, to put at least 1,000 of our lives at risk and potentially just generations worth who can't eat the traditional foods anymore. Mm-hmm. And for anyone who lives, you know, in Indigenous communities or in rural, remote communities, they know how important eating the fish are, eating the seals, eating, you know, the ducks and the geese, and the things that come from the water and the land. Like, those things are incredibly huge, not just because of food security and how expensive foods are, but because we're a culture of people who are connected in that circle of life in a very fundamental and spiritual way. And it's, I mean, the whole economic mess of all of this is one thing, and investors should be terrified to be involved in this project. But from an Indigenous and spiritual perspective, when we talk about the idea of intergenerational trauma and about land trauma and about our blood memories and this perpetuation of what's happening, we talk about this is supposed to be the time when we're decolonizing as a country. You know, our Prime Minister stands up and talks about truth and reconciliation, and a government that says we're going to embrace the United Nations Declarations of Rights for Indigenous Peoples. To do this to people, mm-hmm. to not just literally threaten our lives and threaten our food, but when people have to live in fear 24/7, when people have to feel like they're disposable, that their lives are secondary to an energy project, that does an amount of trauma that it's really hard to explain. Like, I think of our young people who are watching their parents stress and struggle, and people who are law-abiding citizens having to go to court, having to be charged, having to explain to grandchildren why they had to go to jail. Colonization has not stopped in this country. It's just changed its form. You know, our Prime Minister's newest thing is that he is coming to Labrador to give an apology to the residential school survivors.
Wow. That
weren't included in the first apology that was done by Stephen Harper. The idea that he'll come on Labrador soil, and a good chance probably right here in this community, to give this apology while he does and gives federal loan guarantees to allow this project to happen it's wrong. It's just wrong. So us as the Labrador Land Protectors, we've actually sent a formal invitation to have the Prime Minister join us in the traditional sharing circle so he can hear from us, because some of our members are survivors of residential school. Some of us are descendants. My mother went to a residential school. We need him to understand that in our circle, we're settlers and Indigenous people who are embracing what true reconciliation can look like and should look like, and they need to all take responsibility. It can no longer be that the provincial government blames the Crown Corporation, who's and the federal government who says, well, provincial projects are not our concern, when they are the ones who are backing these projects. So it's this comes at this from another sort of just huger other level for us, mm-hmm. when we talk about the duty to consult and being able to give free and prior and informed consent. We don't believe that that's happened in this project because we have been ignored and dismissed right from the environmental assessment stages of this project. I mean, they were doing work before this project was even sanctioned. So, I mean, we have a fight on our hands, and we need the whole country to help us the same way the whole country needs us to help them, because this is happening in everybody's backyard.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, one of the things when you talk about free and informed prior consent, and you talk about UNDRIP and implementing UNDRIP, that this is also this is the mechanism of genocide. When you're deciding, and that's one of the reasons why UNDRIP was created, is that it's trying to mitigate the effects of genocide and trying to stop it, and to have free and informed prior consent. One of the things about that is to acknowledge who it is that you're talking to, and I think that one afternoon for Justin Trudeau in your circle is not going to be enough for him to really understand, because to change a mindset and to understand another way of looking at things, you need more than an afternoon. So I hope that he starts thinking about it even before he gets there.
Absolutely. And I think, like, even the heavy police presence, we have all these, and most of these police officers are coming from out west. They're coming from all over Canada to come here, and we hear about the staff shortages and the stress that our CMP are under as a nation. And yet, the fact that a justice minister of our province can send out the call and have literally hundreds of our CMP have to be given the mandate to come and protect the infrastructure and the materials of a mega project, even in doing so compromising the relationship that they're supposed to be building with communities. Because again, if we look at Truth and Reconciliation's calls to action around justice and around repairing these broken relationships, we have a continued perpetuation of creating this trauma. I mean, I had two plainclothes officers who were from a criminal intelligence division come to my door. Mm-hmm. And in the conversation, they asked a lot of questions. They wanted a lot of information on what our intentions were. We have a very strong value and commitment to nonviolence and to peaceful resistance. And they sort of challenge that, and they sort of say, well, what happens if something goes wrong? And I said, well, you're there with all the guns. I'm not sure how you think you're going to lose this sense of power and control over us. But in doing so, I mean, I have a dog who's usually a really friendly dog, and she's my child. She means a lot to me. Mm-hmm. And she wouldn't let them up in my driveway. And so they made the comment about, is she always this aggressive? Do we need to be worried about her? And it's the first time that it occurred to me that if they tried to take me and she tried to defend me, they'd probably kill her. And that just set off a wave, and it took me a long time, and 3 or 4 days when we finally had a sharing circle. The land protectors did, because we were all feeling that heaviness, and we needed to share around the circle. And when we did that, it made me realize it was my blood memory of all the trauma that the women in my family had felt for generations when authority figures came in. I have women within the generation who have been abused by ministers, who have been, forced into these situations as authority figures would come into our communities and take from us or do things to our women. And it was the first time I understood, and it was a warrior sister that I have who's from Saskatchewan who said, Denise, it's in your blood memory. And this is what's happening. And as we talk about, suicide prevention and changing what's happening in Indigenous communities to our young people, I see it that we're having that trauma now is being perpetuated into our youth, because we have little kids who are watching their grandparents go to jail and having to ask, why are they putting, my nanny, why are they putting my grandmother in jail? And so it's, how are we ever going to really honestly talk about truth and reconciliation as long as governments continue to do this? And they do it in the name of development, which is the other crime that's happening here. Like, it's us who are on trial as peaceful individuals who are forced, because we would much rather enjoy our river and enjoy our land and enjoy our lives, but we're being forced to have to resist against the very government who is being paid to supposedly represent us.
Yeah, and they're actually taking your tax dollars and they're making you pay for for legal costs against you. They're making you pay for RCMP presence that is actually, causing stressing you out, putting pressure on you, basically disrupting your peaceful, many things, your peaceful lifestyle, your town. Sounds like it's like a 1-to-1 ratio, of citizens and RCMP officers.
Right. And while they say that this is for clean, green energy, which we know mega dams are not, they contribute to climate change. The fact that it's having this kind of a negative impact on downstream populations, this idea that Canada needs this energy is a lie. It's an outright lie because they're exporting this energy. They're looking to sell this energy. This is not about sustaining our country. It doesn't seem any of these projects are about that. It's about trying to create this economic feed into a world market. And we need our governments we need to get back control, really, of our governments. Because you're right, we have a fundraising page set up, the Labrador Land Protector Legal Fund, and because we're trying to pay for lawyers, because there's close to 60 of us who are having to go into a court system when really what we need is not just this injunction challenged and thrown out because it's unconstitutional. What we need is to have the whole merits of this project really challenged, because we believe that the duty to consult has not been followed through on in an honest, real way, and certainly our free and prior informed consent has not been given on this. And we're fighting really hard to try to build up a solidarity base, and we have protectors in Ottawa, we have them in Halifax, we have them in St. John's. Hopefully now we're going to have them in Manitoba as well, but in ways that we all work together. And we know what's happening with the Keesaw River in Manitoba, and it's a very similar situation. We have to figure out a way that we make these governments stop, no longer, under the name of colonization, but under capitalism, because now that's what they're doing.
So I'm just looking at, is your fund on fundraiser?
It is, yes.
So that's fundrazr.com, and it's the Labrador Land Protectors Legal Fund. And,
and we need all the help that we can get. And you can find us on Twitter at Protect Labrador, or on Facebook, the Labrador Land Protectors. We're working on a website, but again, we're a grassroots group. So any way that we can help, and we want to connect with other groups who are also in this fight to protect their water and their land and their lives. So please reach out to us. The more we work together, I really believe it's bringing out the waters, the water keepers and the warriors, and whatever language you use when you stand up for humans and for land and for water. Then we're all part of that one family. So we're looking for more brothers and sisters for our family.
I think what we're going to do today is we're going to go out on a Jacinda Beals band song, Don't Kill the River. And Jacinda is actually one of our land protectors who's also facing criminal and civil charges when she blocked the gate last October. She was one of the first 9 actually who got arrested. And she's been a powerful warrior of Labrador for a long time. I'm proud to call her partner. So that's it's a very fitting song. She wrote this song for this river. So thank you so much for talking to us today, Denise. We really appreciate it, and we wish you all the best in your fight. Again, the fundraiser campaign is fundrazr.com, Labrador Land Protectors Legal Fund, and that's going to help the 60 land protectors who have charges against them. So thanks, and hopefully we'll talk to you again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for reaching out. I have special ties in Manitoba. I was actually born in Winnipeg, so I was really excited about having this opportunity. I was raised in Labrador, and Labrador is very much my home and where my roots are, being of Indigenous descent myself. But I was pretty excited about knowing this was happening in Winnipeg. So thank you so much for connecting with us.
Thanks. It was great to talk to you.
Absolutely. You too. Take care.
Okay, take care.
Don't kill the river. What she done to you? Let her live, let her breathe, let her be, let her waters flow through. Don't kill the river. What's it gonna take? She's dying, she's suffering, suffocating every cent that you make. Don't kill the river. Can't you hear her sing? Just listen to the sound of her voice as it moves on the wind. Don't kill the river. Hear what she has to say. Let her live, let her breathe, let her see another day. Everyone's fighting for their piece of the pie. One planet, one chance, don't let it die. Protect, not destroy. Don't kill the river. What she done to you? Let her live, let her breathe, let her be, let her waters flow through. Don't kill the river. What's it gonna take? She's dying, she's suffering, suffocating every cent that you make. Everyone's fighting for their piece of the pie. One planet, one chance, don't let it die. Protect, not destroy.